All right, today we're going to concentrate on functions, and this will be the first time in this class that we've ever done functions. You may have some experience with them from someplace else, but in this class, it's the first time we've done them. So this movie could be pretty helpful for you. Functions are little kind of chunks of code that do a job for you, and you can call a function whenever you need it. And it really helps you organize your code quite a bit. And the best way to understand this is going to be kind of watch what I do here in this movie so that you'll see how this all works. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of versions here. The little game idea that we're going to work with today is this, where there's a paddle that you can control with your up and down arrow. And you got these little circles that I called it an orb in the game. And they come flying across at the paddle. If the orb hits the paddle, it bounces off and it goes back the other way. If an orb gets past the paddle, it's counted as a lost orb. But if you bounce it back, then it's not a lost orb. And there's really kind of no winning this game. It's not a full game. But this is the setup that we're going to be working on here today. But the game is not going to work like this when you click the link that I sent you. You're going to have some work to do to make it work like that. And I'm going to show you how that all is going to happen. So you're going to get a version of it that's going to look like this. It'll be in your email, and you'll click that and have to do view code and remix and rename just like always. And it will look like this. All right. Well, let's look at what's already here. I've already set up, the paddle is already set up, the orb is already set up, the orb has been scaled a little bit, the orb has an X velocity at the beginning. It's going to come across, move from left to right. I just put in a little rotation speed just kind of for fun. And I made a variable called lost because we're going to count lost orbs. And that's one of the functions that we'll put in, and I'll show you how that's going to look too. All right, now inside the draw loop, that's all before the draw loop. And inside the draw loop, I got a background color. I set up orb bounce off paddle, so that's if the orb hits the paddle, it will bounce off. Okay, that's good. We've got to draw sprites in there. And then there's a little bit of scoreboard code in there that tells you how many lost orbs have occurred during the game. All right. So then down here below, the comments that I have down here show you where to put the functions. I want you to get in the habit of putting your functions down below the main program. And when I say the main program, I mean this draw loop right here. All this stuff is kind of the guts of the program, and we're going to put our functions down below that. It's going to be outside the draw loop, below the draw loop. All right, so let's go to work on our first function that we're going to do, and I'll show you how this all happens. There's a functions drawer. And to create a function, we're just going to use this first block right up here. It says function, it says my function. That's the name of it for right now. And I'm going to drag that over and drop it in here where I said player control or paddle control function. And you ought to name functions according to what they do. So I'm just going to call this paddle control. All right, give it a good name. Give it a name that fits what it does. And what we're going to try to do in here is make it so that if somebody hits an up or down arrow, the paddle will move. All right. Well, we have to start that off with an if block. So I'll go, there's actually going to be two if blocks in here. So I'm going to go if, and I'm going to use key down out of the world drawer here. And we're going to set one up for the up arrow, right? So if somebody presses the up arrow, what I want to have happen is that the sprite.y, the paddle.y, is going to change, right? I want it to go up. So I'm bringing over a plus block, and I'll bring over, this is the dot y of the paddle. All right, so I'm going to go paddle and paddle. And then if it's going up, remember that's going to be a negative number. Now the number that I used here, 10, I said negative 10. That will kind of control how quickly the paddle goes up. Right? If you use a 15 or a 20, the paddle is going to move faster. So you can kind of control the speed of the paddle. Now we have to have another one of these if blocks in here to take care of what if somebody hits the down arrow. We want the player to be able to control this panel with the up arrow and the down arrow. Now I could just construct another one, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to click in here and drag. I'm going to copy that, Control C. I'm going to make sure that my little black cursor is sitting in the right spot, and I'm going to paste it, Control V. And I'm just going to switch this to, okay, what if they hit the down arrow? And then all I have to do is change the -10 to a +10, because if they press the down arrow, I want the paddle to go down. All right, so there we go. That function is done. But here's the other thing that you have to do with functions. This function called paddle control is outside of the draw loop. So once a function is made, you have to do what is termed call the function. So here's how we do that. I'm going to go back to the function drawer, and it's this third block. It's a little skinny block that just says my function. If you float over it, it'll say call a function. So I'm going to bring it up here and drop it inside the draw loop. I'll put it right after draw sprites. Now the name, when I call the function, I have to call it by name. Kind of like I would if I was trying to get your attention. I'd call your name. I have to do that here. I have to call the function by name. Well, what did I name that function? Oh, it's called paddle control. All right, so I'll just put in here paddle control. Got to spell it the same. The punctuation has to be the same. The capitalization has to be the same. It's just like variables. They have to match. Paddle control and paddle control. I'm going to run this, and we haven't really done anything with the orbs yet, but if I hit my up and down arrow, you'll see that the paddle is working, and that's what I was after. So I created a function called paddle control, and it's down here at the bottom below the draw loop. And then I called the function right here, and so that makes the program run down here. You know, the program's doing all these commands, and it sees this thing that says paddle control. What's that? So it runs down here, and it finds paddle control, and it does these things for me. All right. Well, now let's forge ahead here. Let's move on. We're gonna write another little function that will take care of a lost orb. All right. Well, to begin with, when you're starting a function, I'm going to use this top one right here, and I'm going to drop it in. I put a comment at line 28 that says lost orb function. All right, so, and I'm going to name this. I want to get in there and take out where it says my function, and I'm just going to call it lost orb. The orb is the little ball, right? And so what makes a lost orb? Well, if the orb, the ball, gets past the paddle, it's going to fly off the right-hand side, and we're going to count it as a lost orb. All right, so this is going to be an if thing, right? I'm going to get an if block, and I'm going to say, and this is going to be a greater than, because I'm going to go check to see if the X location of the orb is past the edge of the screen. So it's going to be a sprite.x, and it's going to be orb.x, and I'm just going to check to see if it's greater than 400. If it is, I got some things to do, right? If it's greater than 400, one of the things I want to do, I put this variable up at the top that says lost equals 0. I want to count lost orbs. So I'm going to go to the variables drawer, and I'll just get the x equals, and I'll bring it over, and I'm going to say lost equals lost plus 1. All right, we're going to count it as a lost orb. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to reset the X and the Y of the orb. I want to send it back over to the left-hand side and reset it. All right, so this is going to be an X here, a sprite.x, and I'm going to use a sprite.y also. And it's going to be orb.x, and it's going to be orb.y. Now for the X, I'm just going to set that back to 0. I just want to send it back over to the left-hand side of the screen so it kind of starts again. But for the Y, I think it's going to be much more fun if we make that a random number. So I'm going to use a random number with limits of 0 and 400, because that means, like, for its up-down coordinate, it could come across up high, it could come across down low, anywhere I want it to. Now the other thing I'm going to do is on the sprites drawer, I'm going to go ahead and set a velocity X and a velocity Y, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. You should do this too. The orb velocity X, I think it's more fun if we make that random, so that some of them go fast and some of them go slower. So I'm going to use a range. You could play with these numbers, you could fiddle with these numbers, but I'm going to use a range of anything from 8 to 20. But you know, the 8's going to be slower and 20 is going to be faster, and it could be anything in between there. And you could have different numbers if you want. Now for the velocity y, here's why I'm doing this. I'm going to set a velocity y and set it to 0. Sometimes when you're playing a game like this, the ball gets going off at a weird angle. And I kind of don't want that here. So every time it gets reset, I just want to make the y velocity 0. So when the ball comes across, it's just like level. It's just coming across level. It'll be coming across at different speeds, but it will be coming across level. All right, well, so I think that's the lost orb function right there, right? It's looking pretty good. But remember that anytime you make a function, it's not going to work until you call the function. And I have to call it by name. And that's going to happen up here in the main program, up here in the draw loop, where all the main commands are. I'll go to the functions, and it's going to be the third one down here. I'll just drop that in, and you have to call it by name. I can't just leave that my function. I have to look down and say, what did I call this? I called it lost orb. All right, so it's going to call for that function. And it will come down here and say, okay, what do I do? The computer's thinking, what do I do when I see lost orb? Well, you do all this. Right? If the x is bigger than 400, I want to count the lost orb. I want to reset its x. I want to reset its y. I want to reset its velocity x. I want to reset its velocity y. And good. All right. So let's run that. And I've got to make sure I get a lost orb here. So I got to be a little bit quicker. I got to get the paddle out of the way. Okay, there we go. Oh, there we go. So I'm trying to have lost orbs right now. So we haven't programmed in. So what happens if it bounces back and goes off the left side? We haven't done that yet. I'm about to do that. All right. But this is working so far. All right. I'll just hit reset over here. And we've got 2 of our 3 functions written. We have 1 more to go. And there's a kind of a shortcut coming up on this one. All right, so the other thing we have to do is if the ball bounces off of the paddle and it goes back over to the left and it goes off the left-hand side, we don't want the game to just like quit when that happens. So again, I'm going to make another function, and it's going to go down here. I'm going to drop it in at like line 41 of this program, and I'm going to call this reset orb. And it's going to be for if it goes off of the left-hand side, then let's do some things. Okay. Well, so it is going to be an if, right? I'm going to bring an if block. And I'm going to be checking a less than situation, so I'm going to bring a less than. And what I'm going to check is the x location of the orb, and I want to check and see if it's less than 0. That's the left-hand side. But now let's think this through. If it is less than 0, if this is true, what do we want to have happen? Really, it's all the same stuff as what I did up here. It's all the same stuff, except for this. I don't want to count a lost orb. If it goes off the left-hand side, I didn't lose the orb because I bounced it back with the paddle. You know, the only way you get a lost orb is if it goes off on the right-hand side, if it gets past the paddle. All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I think this will save a little bit of time. I'm going to click here in the white area up here and select those 4 blocks right there, the orb.x, orb.y, orb velocity x, orb velocity y. I'm going to take all those, Control-C copy. Then again, I got to make sure I got my cursor in the right spot. Control-V paste down here. That saves me some time. I don't really have to rebuild that code because I want to do the same thing. If the orb.x is less than 0, then I want to do all these things. Well, all right, so I made this function called reset orb, but now I have to call it. Remember, when you make a function, you have to call the function. So I'm going to go back to the functions drawer. I'm going to get the third one down. This is what calls a function. I'm going to bring it over and I'll drop it right in here next to my others. What was that name again? Right? Yeah, I always have to call it by name. So I called mine reset orb. Okay. So this has to be called reset orb if I want that to work. So my main program is nice and organized up here. I set my background, I got to bounce off, I got to draw sprites, and then these things do a job for me. Control the paddle, what happens if the orb goes off the right-hand side of the screen, what happens if the orb goes off the left-hand side of the screen, and then this is just scoreboard stuff down here. By the way, could I make a function for the scoreboard? I probably could, but I'm not going to in this movie. All right, so let's look, let's run it. Right, and I can control the paddle with my up and down arrow, and if I hit the orb, it goes back across, and then it regenerates, right? It respawns and it comes back across. If I miss it, it gets counted as a lost orb. All right, cool. And like I said, this isn't really set up. I'm going to miss a few here and watch the lost orbs count up some. Okay, there we go. So this isn't really what I would call like a full-blown game. You know, there's not really necessarily a way to win it. But it's a way, what we're trying to do is get a feeling for how these functions work. We want to try and begin to understand functions. And hopefully, by working through this, you see a little bit about how it works. We're going to work with it more in the future. All right, it's your turn.